Thank you so much. So our second president once said, "I must study politics and war, that my sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy." My sons ought to study mathematics and philosophy, geography, natural history, naval architecture, navigation, commerce, and agriculture, in order to give their children a right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture, statuary, tapestry, and porcelain. And you know what he was saying, what John Adams had in mind was an educated society. And he wanted his children and his grandchildren to be like the Greeks and study music and tapestry and porcelain. But I don't know if we've gotten there yet. And I think his vision was that we would be there by now. So it's our right as human beings, as our generation, to really take that into consideration and take back our literature and our music. So what I propose in our education system today is that we of course, make literacy the #1 priority. And the reason why we should make literacy the #1 priority is that in societies and in places in the world where literacy is low, violence is high. And that's just not everywhere. That's also here in America. In our neighborhoods that have low literacy rates, there is high violence. So where we have high literacy, we will have also more peace in our society. And then the next cornerstone, I think that we should make the biggest priority, and not just an elective anymore, is music. And music, drama, dance, and art. And the reason why is because these are subjects that involve 21st century skills. So at school this year, when I got back from summer break, we had this thing in our box, this paper, and it was an outline of the 21st century skills. And we had to put this up in our classroom. No questions, and I just did it, without even thought. And as I was looking at it one day, I put it up with some duct tape, by the way. I took some duct tape and turned it around, put it back, and because I couldn't figure out how to put it on my wall. I looked at it and I go, well, these are 21st century skills. Here they are, right here. The 5 C's. These are the 21st century skills we're talking about right now. And I go, that's really funny because we've been teaching these 21st century skills in music since antiquity. We've been teaching them since way back when we first started doing music, even before spoken word, even before we had society. We had music, and in music we were teaching these skills right here, right now. So I wanted to just outline how we teach these skills in music education and how we did it back then and how we're going to progress forward. So critical thinking. Now critical thinking in all subjects in high school is apparent. We teach that in science now, we teach that in math now. Critical thinking is a great skill. In music, it's very apparent, and it's been very apparent since when you start learning music. You start learning piano. How do you practice a piece? How does a child learn how to do Mozart? He has to go to his teacher, and he has to practice it. The teacher shows him how to do it, and then he comes back and it does repetition. That's really not critical thinking. Where the critical thinking does come in is when you're teaching orchestra, and you have a passage that is really difficult, and you ask your first violin concertmaster, ask them, well, how can we play this better? And they say, oh, switch to third position. They already know that because they've thought about how to play that better. Critical thinking can also be in choir. In choir, the tenor section, it has to sing through this range called the passaggio. This is between the head voice and the chest voice. And how do you negotiate through that range is something you have to think about when you're singing a piece. And it's something that it's those artistic decisions that the students make that creates this critical thinking and teaches them this. The next of the 5 C's is collaboration. And this is really apparent, like even today with the string quartet, you could see where collaboration really forms. Just having to play as 4 people together without a conductor. We have to listen to each other and respond to each other. We don't have a score in front of us. Everybody has their own part. If someone messes up, someone either has to stop and say, hey, you messed up. And that is something that most classes we don't have that happen. In music, it happens all the time, though. In choir, if somebody messes up, the person next to them is responsible for telling them, hey, you messed up. You know, especially if they don't know that. Collaboration also is apparent with the whole structure of the orchestra itself. And this actually parallels a corporate structure. So, for instance, if you look at the conductor rather as a project manager, and then he has separate sub-managers, you know, subcontractors, and they tell the people in their section what to do. Then, as a group, as a leadership team, we have to decide milestones so that people, if we're learning a Beethoven symphony, for instance, we need to learn that measures 1 through 200 for the first week. And then the next week, we learn measures 200 through 400. And they're responsible for learning that. And the section leader is responsible for making sure that their section learns that. Okay? And after these milestones are all set, well, of course, we have the big date, the concert date, right? And that's when we know if things have gone well and things that have not. And then, after the concert, just like in a true project management team in the corporate world, we reflect on what worked and what didn't work. So as you can see, music is a good model for students and how they can go into the corporate world and actually be effective people. You also, when you collaborate with people, you have to work with people. And some people are late all the time. Some people are always early, you know. And so you always have to constantly deal with people. And in music, this is just a great way to experience people. The next of the 5 C's is creativity. Now, creativity in the other subjects, well, it's apparent in art. In art, creativity is, you know, you have to think about what you want to do, what you want to draw, and actually draw it. In other subjects, it's not so creative. And I even sometimes think that music isn't creative, too. But because we have music that we have to perform, and we have to perform it the way Beethoven said we have to perform it. But if we did exactly what I just said, and we just read the music and played it, it would not sound good. There are artistic decisions that every student, every musician has to make in order for that music to come alive. In jazz band, though, we have an interesting creativity. We have to play music spontaneously. And in order to do that, we don't just, not everyone can do that. It takes a lot of talent to do that. And the reason why is because we have to have a structure within creativity. When I was in high school, I thought that an essay was 5 paragraphs long. And it wasn't until my sophomore year in college where I knew that, oh, wait a minute, most of the essays I've been reading are longer than 5 paragraphs. And it's the same in jazz. In jazz, you know, they think that all blues is 12 bars, and you play just those notes. But if you always played just those notes and 12 bars of blues, everything would sound exactly the same. It's the notes that you accidentally play that are not part of the blues scale. It's going over the 12 bars into 16 bars. It's the composer writing a blues that's an 18-bar blues instead of a 12-bar blues that has that uniqueness that is what is creativity. And as music students, you understand the difference between what the normal is and what the creative is. Next is communication as one of the 5 C's. And music is communication. And what students learn in a high school music program or any kind of music program is that when you communicate using music, you're communicating subconscious thoughts. You are creating undertext within that text. In doing choir, in singing in choir, we sing words. But if they have no meaning behind them, then there's nothing. There's no music. It's when a person sings with meaning, when they understand that the words that they're singing make sense and how they make sense. It is only then that music is created and music is heard. But if someone just stands up here and sings the words in the right notes, again, it's not music. The last thing I want to talk about, or the last of the 5 C's, is global citizenship. When I was at San Jose State, I went on tour to Germany. And this is the first time I ever went out of the United States. I've never been anywhere else in my life. And I went on tour with the San Jose State Choraleers, and we went to Germany. And it was a life-changing experience. I came back a whole nother person. And there's a lot of schools that go on these tours. But what really inspired me was that when we performed music in the church in this town called Marktoberdorf, the audience would not clap until the very end of your program set. So you do song after song after song, and they would not clap. That's something new, that doesn't happen in America. They clap after every movement in a Beethoven symphony. But what happened was we did our German music, and we did some French madrigals, and we did some great music, and then we did a spiritual. And the rest of the pieces that we were doing were spirituals. Our last set of music were all spirituals. And we sang this song, I Couldn't Hear Nobody Pray, and it was a soloist and the choir singing. And I don't think the audience has ever heard an African-American spiritual before. Because at the very end of that piece, not only did they clap when they weren't supposed to, when, traditionally they don't clap, they stood up. And they were just amazed and blown away by it. And I was like, what the heck just happened? It was that experience of, wow, we just shared something. We just shared our culture, our American culture, with the world. And they responded, and they loved it. And that's just something that's unforgettable. That is global citizenship, if anything. So, as you can see, these are the cornerstones. And humanities, I would include philosophy, literature. We're kind of steering away from literature. I don't know if you know this or not. The Common Core, they want the English teachers in high school to teach a lot more nonfiction and less fictional stuff, less literature, so that they can understand better when they go into college and they can read textbooks. And I don't know if I agree with that, but then the other cornerstone would be mathematics, science, engineering, and computer science. I don't think we're teaching computer science enough in our high schools, but it would be a really good idea, especially since computers now rule our world. It would just make a lot more sense if you knew how to debug a program that just kind of crashed on you, rather than having to call tech support. Having that computer knowledge. And then physical education. Our kids, they go home and they play video games. And they need to get out. They need to exercise. They need to know their bodies. And then that's the same with dance too. We've just totally put dance on the back burner. One other thing about music is that music is a slow learning process. I mean, for any of these young women and men to learn how to play the violin, they can't learn it in 6 months. They can't learn it in 3 weeks like you can learn some other skills. It took them a good 7-8 years to get as good as they did. And in our society of instant gratification, we need to focus, we need to have skills like this where we teach students how to learn over a course of time and not just little facts here and there, and that's their learning. It is a long learning process, and the more we teach this and the more adamant we are about teaching learning, the better our society will be. So let's take back what John Adams said and teach our kids poetry and music and literature and all of those things. Thank you.